Commission regular meeting, January 22nd, 2024. We appreciate your interest and we encourage public participation in our meeting. Your comments are important to our decision-making process. There'll be two opportunities to address the Planning Commission. The first will come early in the meeting when we ask for public comment for items not on the agenda. The second will come as if there is a public hearing when the chairman declares the hearing open for comment. Anyone will inquire if anyone wishes to address the members of the commission. Anyone addressing the commission will approach the podium, give your first and last name, and your complete physical address. Comments must be limited to 3 minutes. Roll call.
Mr. Austin?
Present.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Weaver?
Present.
Mr. Pennington? Mr. Sproles?
Present.
Mr. Wilson?
Present.
And Mr. Schuman.
Present. Next item of business is the approval of minutes, regular meeting December 18, 2023. I think everybody's been furnished those minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Wilson. Any additional discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Oh, okay.
I was absent.
Next item of business is certificate of appropriateness, Young and Associates, Inc., 5583 Bob Hicks Highway, Suite 111. I'm sorry, I skipped over public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there anybody signed up to speak? Anybody here that wants to speak? All right. Then the next item of business is certificate of appropriateness, Young and Associates, Inc., 5583 Bob Hicks Highway, Suite 111, Johnson City, Tennessee, 37615. Owner, Trish Thompson, Skyway Outdoor, Inc. Applicant, certificate of appropriateness for signage located at 480 Cummings Street, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Tax map ID, parentheses 020-10-2 in parentheses. Staff report.
Good evening. For the staff report, Young and Associates, the owner, and Trish Thompson of Skyway Outdoor, applicant, have requested approval of a certificate of appropriateness to remove the existing wall sign and replace the two existing freestanding signs. And this is located at 480 Cummings Street. So a little bit of the background: there is an existing wall sign and two existing freestanding signs used for the business. The building was previously occupied by Shoney's and is currently occupied by Fiddler's Restaurant. The applicant proposes to remove the existing wall sign above the primary entryway of the building. Staff has contacted to ask if another wall sign will be put in. The applicant has stated that there will be no replacement at this time. So the town zoning code for the freestanding signs, it allows for only one monument sign per street frontage in the general business district. There are two freestanding signs on the property right now. There is no known date for when these signs were installed. So the first one, the pylon sign, is a non-conforming sign. Staff has not found a variance. So the proposed pylon sign can be brought into conformity through the Planning Commission. So the proposed pylon sign is around 140 square feet larger area than allowed, and then the proposed sign is also 31 feet taller than what is allowed. The proposed sign will match the size of the existing monument and pylon freestanding signs. There will be no change in area, height, or location. So the existing pylon freestanding sign and cabinet will be removed and replaced with a new fabricated, internally illuminated, double-sided cabinet with digitally printed panographic flex faces. The sign will measure 25 feet by 8 feet with a total area of 200 square feet. And the proposed sign area size will match the existing sign size. And the height of the sign is 46 feet. The color of the sign will consist of the outside edge being Pantone 7488 CP, and the lettering to use both colors, Pantone 2322 CP and Pantone 4023 CP. And then the background is just to be white. And then for the smaller monument sign, the faces will be replaced with new faces that are to be decorated with digitally printed first surface applied vinyl. And then the proposed sign size will match the existing sign size. The existing electronic messaging display below the proposed sign will not be changed. And then the color of the sign will consist of the lettering being Pantone 2322 CP and Pantone 4023 CP, and then with the background to be white. Any questions?
Questions? What's the pleasure of the commission? Is there a motion?
I don't know if your applicant wants to speak. I don't know
Oh.
if the applicants are here and wish to speak.
Does the applicant want to speak?
I'm here for the applicant. but,
Okay.
I mean, I don't have anything further to add unless you have questions. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Anybody have questions for the applicant? Is there a motion?
Is this the well, not a motion, but just discussion? Is this not the opportunity to bring this sign into conformance?
Specifically, the
height
The
and
height of the
and
sign.
the square footage itself?
I guess my question is, what is the allowable height? It says it's 31 feet taller than allowed, but what's you know the?
It's right here in your thing,
It's-
so.
I just didn't read it. Huh?
Yep, the height that's allowed is 15 feet.
Oh, 15 feet. I see.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you.
And this area of square footage is 60 square feet.
So basically half is.
And staff was not able to find any waivers, anything of that nature?
No, we looked everywhere. This sign has been there since the 80s, I think, so it's very difficult. Or wait, what was it, 1997?
It was like, it showed up like it's when we got the trees out there, but even I couldn't even put down a date. It's been there for as long as people could remember from around here, and I asked other people, but I could not find any variance.
Want to come up to the podium?
My apologies, used to coming up the first time. Gabriel Christopher, Town of Abington. I looked through our minutes from in the 80s
Mhm.
and the 90s and 2000s, both in the Planning Commission and the BZA, and I could not find any variance, any waiver, any sort of case that related to this particular sign for the pylon, so.
What we did look, though, is the zoning at the time would have been this same, these same requirements. So if you're within 660 feet of I-81, you get to be up to 50 feet, and you get the 200 square feet. So it seems like at some point, someone either made that determination with this sign, but it is outside of that distance.
And that code was 1993. That's when that was.
So what would it take to bring these signs into compliance? How much would you have to reduce the height?
I believe it's set on there.
31 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 46 down to,
So you'd have to reduce it 15 feet, is that?
Yeah.
I would have to reduce it 31 feet, is
yeah,
that what it
it's
is?
15 feet.
Yeah, so just on the record, as we state in the staff report, the proposed pylon sign is 140 square feet in area larger than allowed, so it'd have to be brought down 140 square feet from the 200. And then it's 31 feet higher than what's allowed. So for these signs that are in a B2 zone, which is the general business district, for ones, the square footage is only allowed to be 60 square feet, and it can only be 15 feet high. And that was according to our new code that we adopted in January, but also the code that we looked back on in 1993. It had the same requirements as we have now.
So how did you guys figure out how many feet it is from 81? It says 660
It's over.
is allowed, but
I think I checked it. It was like over 1,600, but Caleb can give
It's a
it.
quarter mile.
okay,
Yeah.
So
that's significant then.
Yeah.
it's double.
Yeah. So we were double checking that too in a sense just to see
Yeah,
for that. But
it would be good to conform to what's required now.
Could I ask a question now?
Yeah, could you come up to the podium
Sure.
though and state your name for the record and, yeah, thank you.
My name is Steve Nolly. I'm with Skyway Outdoor. We're the ones who are making the application for the applicant, and we will be doing the manufacturing. My question is,
Can you give us your address too, please?
Sure.
Sorry.
65 Progress Drive, Ashton, Virginia, 24314.
Thank you.
Anyway, my question is, if you guys are interested in bringing this sign into compliance and pulling it down, will there be an opportunity for them to have just face replacements for this particular sign instead of taking it down? Because this particular sign is crucial to their operation because they are trying to attract people from 81, obviously. And if we were to take this sign down and come into compliance with the 15-foot height, that'll totally eliminate that ability for them to attract people off of 81. So my assumption is that if you guys want them to pull this sign into compliance, they will want to then revisit the issue and determine if they can just do a face replacement, which, do you know the answer to that?
This is actually in the entrance corridor, so you don't get to do a face replacement, unfortunately.
That was my question, yeah. So they don't get to change the faces in it, they can only maintain it if you choose to not allow them to have this.
Correct.
Okay. That's the only question I have.
And I know there are no size, maybe you could tell us, do you know what the size of this the Second Fiddler's restaurant?
Actually, I was supposed to mention that one as I was leaving.
Oh,
So I
okay.
don't know the exact size of that one, but it's pretty small.
It is, but it is probably a lot closer to what 60 square feet would be, only because it's probably 2.5 feet tall by 15, 20, so.
Yeah, it's very small, and it's quite insignificant, actually. I mean, they would be willing to forego that sign if they could have the, larger high-rise sign, I'm sure.
Sir, I understand your position here tonight. It sort of puts you in the middle
Yeah.
to some extent, not knowing what they might want. Would you prefer that perhaps we table this to the next meeting and give you the opportunity to talk with them and to get the answers to those
Well, we
questions?
can do that. They're sort of under the gun on this one with their opening date, so the plan was that we would begin fabrication tomorrow, if this
Yes.
is approved, because they're really trying to push and get the store open. So if we table it, that would be for another month, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have any inkling of what you're thinking about doing at this point? If you think you guys are really interested in bringing it into compliance and not allowing them to have this sign, which would be very detrimental to their business, I could possibly step out, maybe get a hold of the client, see what they're interested in doing, go from there.
Question, let's assume that we, just so that for information purposes, let's assume that we tonight agree that we should bring the signs into compliance. What is the appeal from the applicant to that decision? Does that go to the BZA, go to the council?
It would actually go to town council as the appeal for this decision here. So, yes, if you table it and they have time to discuss, now, I think it would be good if you all could discuss and say, are you really wanting him to bring it down to 15 feet and 60 square feet, which again is probably the height of this Kroger sign that's there? Is that what you're wanting, or are you asking him to come back with a compromise, or is there interest, because we've heard one thing, but I don't know that everyone has voiced a opinion.
Well,
But if you deny it, yes, they can appeal it to the town council.
I'm trying to think, what other tall signs there's, McDonald's have,
yeah,
big
Wendy's,
pylons,
McDonald's.
those guys all have them.
Just down the road, just a little piece toward the interstate is that enormous Food City sign that they just installed that has that multi-tenant uh,
yeah.
situation with a really large LED display.
Hardee's, Exxon, McDonald's, is that Wendy's?
Well, I mean, you've got all of them down through there, Taco Bell and what have you, so.
That,
Now,
I don't know, that Wendy's seems like it'd be on the limit of 600 feet, but maybe not.
what's the size of the Taco Bell sign? The reason I ask that is that property was approved not that long ago because the store had to be rebuilt. And so I'm curious as to the height of that.
I don't know that I could find that for you right now to tell you what that size is. We could definitely look for that in the old records, but I wouldn't know just from looking at it. But basically from here, you get to the 600. It's kind of in here,
That's
really.
it, okay.
So you've got more, there are more businesses that have large signs like this outside of that 600 square foot area. So definitely you've got your Wendy's and your, the Wendy's and the Taco Bell, both should probably not be that tall, if they were complying with zoning. This, I'm sure, because this came in as like a master plan for this whole entire development, so when you do a master plan, you can ask for additional signage, but that's probably also right on the cusp of the area. So yes, I mean, ultimately you have at least 4 signs that are larger than the 15 feet in addition to this one.
My guess, and based on my experience, the Taco Bell sign and the Wendy's sign are both significantly taller than the Shawnee sign is now.
Yeah, the square footage of the Shawnee sign is quite a bit larger than would even be allowed, but even some of these other signs that you have in the area, like the Arby's, I mean, clearly that's larger than 15 feet, as well as any of these other signs are all larger than 15 feet. So it's not unprecedented. It's just, this is the time, if you are wanting to bring a sign into compliance, this is the time in which you could require that.
Where did the 660 actually come from?
The zoning, but there's nothing, I don't have a history
Is that
because
an arbitrary figure?
as
or
far
is it-
back as we could tell, it was that, so I'm not sure.
I wonder if they just measured to town center or something
Mhm.
and said, oh, it's gotta be something of maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the commercial that has built up here on Cummings certainly wasn't there at that time, but,
Well, from my point of view, if he were coming in here requesting a new sign that size and height, I wouldn't have any problem saying no. But because it's already there, and he's just replacing the facing or the top element, I really don't have any objection. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't diminish the visual there.
Well, and I'm trying to figure out how the others got approved,
Yeah.
so.
I think it would depend on when they were, because they weren't all built at the same time. Now, the only one I
Correct, but I
know.
mean, the town's already stated that the zoning really hasn't changed.
Yeah. The only one I know that's anywhere near recent was that they rebuilt Taco Bell because there had been, that restaurant had been destroyed. Now, I don't know if they had to redo the sign at that time, but they did have to redo the restaurant. And Wayne, I think you were on the planning commission then, I was. And so they approved the building, but I don't know if they had to reapprove the sign. Because the sign wasn't damaged.
And this is 2008, which is the farthest back I can go on the imagery here, and it appears that the sign was definitely in place.
So,
So it was in place. It looks like they rebuilt somewhere in 2015, but the sign, yeah, because it looks like this. So it looks like the sign was already there as far back as.
Taco Bell did go through a reimaging recently. Can you tell if it's the same sign or if it's, 'cause I know we've changed out a couple of them where they went from one style to a different style. See, this one right here appears to be is that the same sign?
Let's see. Let me get out here. It's in a weird. It's kind of tucked behind a pole here
Yeah.
when it comes to the actual imagery. All right. Let's see if we can see that. So that's 2021, and what I've got here, just not really great.
Can you go back one more time? See how this one has see that one has like the bell,
Mhm.
which is sticking up on the top, and the other one is a smooth arch. The newer one is a smooth arch.
Mhm.
Yep.
I mean, to me, the number of other signs on the same street that are clearly over a height limit, I don't see the point in doing anything with this one individual sign. And I kind of agree that lowering that sign, given its distance from the interstate, would be detrimental to attracting interstate business.
do you want to make that in form of a motion?
I would.
So your motion is to approve the
Sign,
signs as submitted.
yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Weaver, if you would call the roll.
Well, let's have discussion
Well,
on
okay, I
on the
mean-
motion. I don't feel real strongly about it, one way or the other, to be frank with you, but, before I say the but part of it, let me also say I don't think that we need to be in a situation where we can't modify or vary or whatever we want to call it in these situations. But by the same token, I feel a little bit disappointed that we just adopted new signage regulations, and this is an opportunity to begin to, in some way, enforce those, and we're about to decline to do that. I would suggest if we do approve this motion that's been made tonight, that we consider revamping our regulations on these such that, maybe we increase the distance from the interstate they're allowed or whatever, but I think we need to give consideration to doing that if we pass this motion.
Well, and I think one of the aspects that needs to be factored in is what the business is going forward. This could be, in that this is the same restaurant business, things of this nature. I agree. I don't really have a concern with it. If this was a different type of business wanting to advertise, CBD or anything of that nature, really not. I don't think that's in the best interest of the town.
Well, and I think that's an important point because one of the areas, the old Pizza Hut, is now no
Correct.
longer a restaurant. So if there was a request, that would fall into the point you're making. And there's also, depending on, there's a middle ground in the sense that we could, approve the height, make the sign smaller or not have it quite as high. I mean, there are some measures like that, but, my thought is that, I don't know that takes us any closer to being in compliance, maybe a little bit, but.
Well, and also, I don't think granting a variance here, really sets any precedence going forward. I think the planning commission has the authority at any time to, on any future application saying no. We don't approve that. In this situation, you're going back space for space with a similar use as far as for the facility, everything of this nature. So in the totality, I really don't have a concern with it. I'm certainly appreciate the sign ordinance, but I'm sitting there saying, how did the others get approved? Where'd the 660 come from? This is along a main corridor, so whenever you're looking at everything, and Shoney's has been there since the 80s. So I don't know how long that sign's been there, but it just seems kind of arbitrary as far as some of the aspects here.
So I'll make two comments. One is, it is a different sign, so when he was saying replacing the face, we didn't do a calculation of the exact square footage for the exact square footage. So, they are, if this was beyond the square footage, then yes, that could be a true actual variance in front of the BZA.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that I will also say, just again for the record, for all the attorneys in the room, is that we don't make sign decisions based on what the topic is on the sign. So, yes,
Understood.
if a CBD shop came in and it had the same exact colors as Fiddler's Restaurant and it was this exact same shape, it could be replaced with the word CBD without coming in front of you all. So, it is
Thank
something
you.
to take into consideration.
One thing I do want to clarify on the size statement that you made, we did measure the sign.
Okay.
We are going back with the exact same size.
Okay, perfect. Good.
Any additional discussion? If you would call the roll.
Mr. Austin?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Weaver?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next order of business is certificate of appropriateness. Abingdon Development Company, Inc., owner, Tumbling Creek Cider Company, and Delta Blues Draft House applicant, certificate of appropriateness for signage located at 238 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia 24210, tax map ID, parentheses 012-1-127, in parentheses, staff report.
Gabe, I'm gonna ask you, I don't see the the comprehensive sign plan wasn't put in here with this. Or at least mine doesn't have it. Could you, just, because it may come up, we may need that.
You want this from the last time?
The one that you all created, yes, the one that's already approved. Okay, so this, I'll kind of get into this and we can chat about it, but development company, owner and Tumbling Creek Cider Company and Delta Blues Draft House have requested a certificate of appropriateness to add wall signage to the Abingdon Commons buildings for their respective businesses. This is located at 238 West Main Street. So, as you all know, in the background, you approved a conditional use permit for a comprehensive sign plan. At that time, what you were approving was all the signage for the building, and that was proposed. So you didn't go in and look at every single business that could possibly be there in the future. We didn't look at all of the extra signage that might be allowed. And so we have now had two incidences, last meeting and this meeting, where different signs were requested then were part of that. That's not wrong. Each one of these signs, each one of these businesses can have a sign for their business outside of the comprehensive sign plan. So the comprehensive sign plan still is approved and still holds steady. So if either one of these buildings had come in and wanted to have the sign that was approved prior, which was the 4x6, 24 square feet, they would have never had to come back in front of you all. So that's the beauty of the master sign plan, the comprehensive sign plan. The idea is that the owner of all the buildings says, hey, I already got signage approved for you. You're just coming in and we're just doing a sign permit. You don't have to go back through the meeting. But they did want to come back in front of you for their specific signs. So both Delta Blues and Tumbling Creek Cider. So I'll go through what they are allowed and what they got approved with the comprehensive sign plan, and then you all can discuss it with them, and if you have any additional questions. So we'll start with Tumbling Creek Cider. As you know, our signage is based on the length of the front of the facade. So Tumbling Creek Cider, their allowable square footage would be 86 square feet. What was approved with the comprehensive sign plan was 24 square feet. So they are actually, since their request is for a 30 square foot sign, they're only asking for 6 more square feet than they already had approved with the comprehensive sign plan. Similarly, for Delta Blues, their allowable sign area is 118 square feet, and they're wanting a total of 36 square feet. So since each of these businesses is coming to you with a certificate of appropriateness tonight, separate from their comprehensive sign plan, if you were to approve either one of the signs, the 30 square feet for Tumbling Creek Cider and the 36 square feet for Delta Blues, both of those would be in compliance with what the underlying zoning allows. So the Tumbling Creek Cider sign, what they're looking for is a wall sign, which is like a single row, 12 inches by 18, and it's going to be metal or vinyl with freestanding lettering. The square footage is 18 inches by 240 inches for a total of 30 square feet, and the lettering color will be white with black borders. The Delta Blues sign is proposed to be stacked 12 inches by 18 inches, and that's for a total of 36 square feet. So one of the interesting features in our ordinance says that signage is not allowed on the top, like on the roof, so you can't have roof signage. However, we don't really describe what they've built here, which is a pergola that sits basically in front of their building. So with that, I'm having Gabe print off at least the comprehensive sign plan that was approved so you can see that. But these signs, both of them as proposed, would fit into the underlying zoning square footage.
All right. Questions for Ms. Rice? Does the applicant want to make a presentation?
My name's Justin Dick. I'm one of the owners of Tumbling Creek Cider Company, 30558 Old Saltworks Road, Meadowview, Virginia, 24361. And this project has been a complex one, and we're appreciative of the progress and work so far. And it's a challenge to get all of the details and ducks in a row. And it is, as you're aware, we're predominantly a tourist-driven business, and having the visibility and clarity of both our business and our other partner businesses is critical for the success of our business as both a tourist and for our locals. So just, I guess, to frame the context of that, and of course we're certainly willing to tweak or amend as needed, whatever. We're, quite frankly, pretty ignorant on the process. We rely on our construction partners on a lot of these details, and we're whatever we need to do to ensure the success of our new enterprise here in downtown Abingdon.
Any questions for Mr. Dick? Thank you.
Thank you.
My point of clarification. The comprehensive sign plan that was approved, the requested signage during the COA, for the COA right now, is in lieu of
That
the
is,
comprehensive plan.
that is correct. That is correct.
So all of the smaller signs that are gonna be hanging in the gables, things of that nature, relative to any of the business at Tumbling Creek, or those
So-
are gonna be removed?
No, so none of those are actually related to this. This is actually in the back half. They haven't even really kind of gotten to that part. Let's see if I can, in this picture here on page 12, all of those little signs are actually over in the part of the building that you don't see in this picture.
Okay.
This is gonna be on top of the pergola, so, yeah, so those won't be removed. And truth be told, at this point, let's say in the future, and I don't mean this against their businesses, but let's say in the future, these two businesses became something completely different. They would still, with that special use permit, they would still have the ability to have that square footage of sign. So, basically, that will stay, because that special use permit runs with the land. These COAs don't run with the land, they run with the request. So, in the future, there's still signage for that whole, project, regardless of tonight.
Additional questions, comments?
Is there gonna be a fascia there that this is mounted to, or I'm unclear on how this lettering is gonna be secured?
I'm Nathan Berg, 24383 Walden Road, representing Waldwood Construction. So it's a little bit difficult to tell from just this front elevation. If you were to look at it from the side, and honestly, this would be easier if I could draw it than explaining it. But that signage would be on the leading edge of the pergola. And they would be, the sign company would engineer braces that would diagonally go back into the framing of the pergola.
We might have a picture here.
So
from
it
the
is,
side.
for Delta Blues Draft House, for example, it's individual letters, or?
I'm not gonna speak for the sign company, but I would imagine those letters would be connected, even though they're made to look sort of separate. But I don't see how they would build it with all separate letters, if that makes sense. So they probably would be connected, with some sort of a low profile fastener.
Let's see, we got one picture that kind of shows it from the side, but I can't tell from all those field photos which ones would. Do you know which one, Caleb, in your field photos that would have showed it from the side a little better?
Actually, the pergola is partially built now, so.
Yeah, so we went and took a picture last week.
Okay. You braved the cold?
There you go.
There we are. Yeah, there we go.
So,
If, yeah, so you can see that's the profile of the pergola. And so that, the signage would be on the outermost edge of the pergola.
So from that view, you'd be looking at the backside? of the
Yeah, you
lettering.
would see the back of it. If you were coming,
Remsburg.
east on Remsburg.
That
But it would be difficult, it would be, I don't know if you would be able to see it, because you might catch a
Depends on the
glimpse.
height.
Yeah, I mean, the building will kind of be blocking that view.
let's see if we can go.
Numbers 350.
Let's see, right here.
Does the Delta Blues sign have to be stacked, or is there space enough to make it appear the same as the Tumbling Creek? In other words, all on one level?
So that sign was designed by Delta Blues, and so.
Yeah, we're flexible, so if that's what that needs to be, we don't have to stack it. We were just trying to keep things uniform, but maybe a little different since we're two different businesses.
Mhm.
But if we need to, the left of that, do it just like theirs, we're fine with that, if that's the way this needs to be.
That thing looks way higher than in the drawing. It's
probably the
Yeah.
perspective, but it's the same height as the drawing.
And then I don't, so the part that says Tumbling Creek shows like the deck and like, I guess doors up there, but the building doesn't look tall enough to do that to me, but.
It's not, if you look at the signage kind of blocks the gable. There'll be a dormer that's built onto that to provide the headroom.
Okay.
But the entrance to Delta Blues is on a different level than the entrance to the.
That's correct. Mhm.
Okay.
The entrance to the cidery will be it's in a mezzanine floor that's essentially a floor above Delta Blues.
What's the height of the tap room? Do you have any idea? You've got the lettering identified, but you don't have.
You would need to ask them. I'm not entirely sure.
So where it says tap room, I believe that is the same size as the sign that is approved with the comprehensive sign plan.
So on page 11, that's what I was understanding, but I don't know what the height is. So
It would be-
the emblem, the circle that they already have approved, yes.
Okay, but what's being requested is in lieu of.
It is not in lieu of, they're
It's-
adding in addition.
They're added.
Yep,
Yes.
yep.
Well, if I'm correct, the Delta Blues is the old kind of brick building at the end, but the cider company is to the right of that. Is that correct?
Right
So
here.
Delta Blues and the cidery will both be housed in the same
In this, okay.
lower structure.
That's
Delta
what I
Blues,
wasn't
three
clear on.
overhead doors there
Correct.
to the left.
That's right.
Additional questions? What's the pleasure of the commission? I personally would rather not see that Delta Blue sign stacked. I think it would look better if it was all on a uniform, even though the colors wouldn't necessarily be the same.
I agree with that. I think they've said they have
Yeah,
no
they
problem
didn't have-
with that.
Do you want to make that in the form of a motion?
I will that we approve the certificate of appropriateness with the exception that we ask that the Delta Blues sign not be stacked as depicted on the diagram that we have.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Additional discussion or questions? If not, if you would call the roll.
Mr. Austin?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Weaver?
All right.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Aye. Next order of business, old business matters not on the agenda. I notice,
We don't really have anything else. It sounds like we might want to do another amendment to the sign code, which is totally fine. It's a living document. But yeah, we don't really have anything else on the agenda at the moment.
Could we just have staff look at that
Mhm.
and
Yes.
discuss it perhaps our next meeting?
That sounds good. We can bring a memo. What I'll probably do is look at each of the interchanges and kind of give you an idea of which signs are up this height, which ones are outside of that, just using the GIS and a buffer. And then we can figure out if we want to change it or if we want to talk about certain types of businesses. I mean, we can really make that decision as a body.
One of the questions I keep wrestling with is comprehensive sign plan.
Mhm.
What's, in reality, what's the significance of it? Because you can come back and you can modify anything and everything. We've modified this one 3 to 4 times now.
Right. It may be that you don't want to do it. I mean, normally it makes sense because a large, I mean, if you had multiple businesses like this, then they would not have had to come back. They could have just come. The idea is really for the ease of their tenants, so that they get this done all in one fell swoop, you all approve it, and then the next people just come to us and just basically get a sign permit. It doesn't necessarily seem like these are working that way.
Although the square footage of the signs still fits the comprehensive sign plan, so
Well, no.
Well, it's
we
kinda
have
the opposite.
maintained
It
it.
doesn't fit the comprehensive sign plan. What it does is fits the underlying zoning, that of the permitted area.
Oh,
for the
okay,
sign.
I see what, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's, you know, my idea is whenever you have a comprehensive sign plan for a structure, a building, you know, it's all encompassing, just like you were saying.
Mhm.
Businesses can turn over and what have you. You don't have to come back here to request any signing.
Correct.
But we've had to address signage on this building now, you know, 3 different times. And you're talking about a fluid document. I'm trying to figure out why we even spent time on the comprehensive.
Well, I think in this case, they did not have a professional designer related to signage. Like a lot of, you know, these fast food guys all have, like, they've got it figured out. And it seems to me they just kind of like, oh, you know, kind of hastily put it together. That's my impression. And
And
so
this-
now that it's a reality, they're like, oh, wait, these signs aren't gonna work.
This structure is a very nice structure and, you know, you kind of, I'm trying to wrestle with saying, okay, well, it can end up being just a billboard. Instead of everything looking organized under one plan.
So you could have denied them tonight, and they would have been required to stay within the master sign plan.
Well, the one thing about, I guess, that is the building that you're seeing there, the block part on the far side, that actually, at least initially, wasn't part of the initial plan. They weren't necessarily going to.
Well, and that's a valid point. That is-
That's why I asked the question of Nate, is when we started dealing with this, we were dealing with two things. We were dealing with only the building to the right of it. The other thing is, all of those signs on the building to the right are basically in one building. When you go into that building, there are a number of businesses in the building, but it's one entrance, or it's not significantly different businesses. So this is a different aspect of the development that wasn't part of the development, at least initially.
But each business that goes into that building, into the brick building, has the right to come back and then petition for additional signage. That they would be allowed, correct?
Not necessarily, because
Okay.
those are all considered, I mean, it's one structure, so yes, I would support what Kenny's saying here, that, you know, because they're specific businesses and have their own separate square footage and their own length of building, whereas all the other businesses are one business. Does that make sense? Like, because it's awkwardly, because it's based on the linear foot of the front of your business. So it creates kind of a funny thing where this is all the linear feet of two businesses, but then the front part is really the linear feet of one, like a interior mall space. Now, if somebody came and said, instead of it saying cheese, bakery, et cetera, inside those little, and they wanted instead for it to say CBD or,
Well, I mean,
yeah, you could, I mean, it is sort of the same thing. They could come in and change those. But if we brought it in front of you for each of those businesses, there wouldn't really be a length of a front for us to measure.
okay. I didn't mean to take the commission's time up. I just need to go back and review.
No, I think these are excellent things to discuss. That's how you decide if you want to continue down this path or not, so.
Well, I mean, it just, that's a good question.
Mhm.
That's a very valid question.
And maybe we can have a more generalized sign discussion at our next. And I know it seems like all we deal with is signs, especially like making edits and new sign codes but it is always, I mean, it makes or breaks the way your community looks. And so
Well,
I think it's.
That's
Mhm.
my concern.
Yep.
You know,
I wish, it's a little late for this now, but that structure is so tall, I'd rather see the signs down below the pergola instead of on top of it. I think their point is to try to get the signage up there where it can be seen from Cummings Street, but it would have been a better design, I think, to have them below the pergola. Because that pergola is way out of scale.
I think that's what.
Yeah, it
Steve alluded
looks
to.
weird to me, but I'm an amateur architect.
These.
Do you
I
have
guess
the
these
master
issues
sign?
are-
I think the master sign plan shows the pergola with the signage a little more clearly. And I don't think everyone needs, well, you can, I guess, yeah.
I mean, I think this is something we're gonna end up wrestling with all the growth. I mean, there's gonna be, when you think about some of the development that's going on in town, this isn't gonna be the last one of these.
Sorry, I
We
didn't look at the
haven't
packet, I didn't
discussed any
realize.
signage
I meant
for
for it to
the
be in there, but-
boutique hotel beside Mamma Mia's. You've got that, you've got, you know, other areas, you've got the building that was the old jail, you know, where is their sign gonna be? I mean, there's gonna be additional discussions on some of these things and questions similar to what we talked about, you know, where, the sign plan that we actually did not approve, and, well, I guess we did approve, and the town council decided to revisit that, you know, with the girl and the raven and so forth, so I don't think this is the last time we're gonna be doing.
Well, I mean, but Mr. Alston made a very valid point. It doesn't do any good to have things in writing.
Yeah.
You know, if all of a sudden the issues present themselves here and we modify them. The idea is to have, and it can be a fluid document, you know, if we need to make some revisions, but be able to hand this to somebody and say, here's what you need to comply with. You know, and if business is turned over, then, you know, it's clear.
And it gives certainty to those businesses too. as
Yes, sir.
The rules they're playing by. What we're doing, like playing a football game, we're changing the rules during the game.
That's one of the issues we wrestled with the HPRP. It doesn't matter what the makeup of the committee is. Here are the rules. And comply with the rules.
Right.
And everybody understands, you know, just like covenants, restrictions in the subdivision. Here's what they are. So.
Yes, sir.
Well, I
Yeah, so
think-
on page 8 is, your master sign plan, the first time that you recommended approval, what you recommended approval for is page 8. It does, to me, the scale does look awkward compared to the way the photo here looks. I mean, this looked on page 8 like a more, like one solid building. But I don't know when this is done. I'm assuming that it will have a more connected look than it does currently.
Well, and I wonder, it's not the town's area to do this, but I wonder how often when like the building for Shoney's changed hands. And I'd be curious to know if that discussion with the sign in terms of the sale was ever had. In other words, people who came in, bought that building, decided to make it Fiddler's as opposed to Shoney's. I would be willing to bet that they had absolutely no idea that, or had no inkling that they would have to make a change as the sign ordinance calls for. That, I guess it concerns me, but I don't know whose responsibility that would be. I guess that, you know, the buyer beware, but, yeah. But to some extent, you know, that is also an issue.
I may be wrong, but I don't think it changed owners, did it? It's the same folks.
I think the same company.
Yeah, same
I
company,
believe
just
so.
changing to a
Just
different
didn't want to pay
restaurant.
Shoney's franchise fee anymore.
Just rebranded it for that.
Yeah.
you've got olive oil company. I'm not sure that what they have out there is anything close to what we approved.
Yeah, they put a billboard up, basically,
Yeah.
instead of a fence with a sign on it.
The oil company, yeah. I mean, it makes us really aware of how motions matter. That's why a lot of times I'd prefer not to have motions that are like what's in the packet and be very specific, like a 200 square foot sign at this exact height with this exact coloring on a fence, because it becomes really awkward when we go back to listen and somebody says like, yes, 200 square foot sign attached to a fence, and they're like, well, it's attached to a fence, but it looks really, really awkward. So we do try to put a motion in the back of your packet. You're always willing to, if you ever want to, we can make those more specific if it would be helpful, but, that's another thing, just, you know, to make sure that we are specific. Helpful when we have to challenge people. Because we listened to the olive oil hearing, I can't even tell you how many times, and nothing really eliminated them from doing exactly what they did, so.
Additional discussion? Anything else to come before the commission? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll say.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.